Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Be Brave podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick trigger warning. This podcast will talk about child sexual abuse, trauma, and recovery. Please listen with care and kindness to yourself. If at any point you feel triggered, pause, take a break, and come back when you're ready. I'll share some helpline numbers at the end for anyone who needs support. And just so you know, throughout the series, we'll be using words like CSA, grooming, and other terms that might be difficult to hear. Please take care of yourself whilst listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Be Brave podcast. Thank you for being here today. Today, we are joined by Poppy. Poppy is a survivor advocate and activist for people affected by childhood sexual abuse. She has since opened up about her lived experience to campaign for greater awareness, safeguarding, and survivor-led change across the UK. Her story was shared in the BBC programme My Grandfather, the Abuser, Poppy Story. And since then, she has gone on to work as a real-life story volunteer and ambassador for the NSPCC, contributing survivor insight to discussions around ISCA recommendations, the Victim and Prisoners Bill, and wider policy affecting survivors. So, Poppy, thank you so much for being here with us today. Before we start, I just want to say this can be quite a heavy conversation, as I know that you are very aware it can be quite a lot. So there's absolutely no pressure to answer anything, or if you don't want to answer anything, that's fine, and pause if you need, like I said before. So before we begin properly, how are you feeling about joining the conversation today?
I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's been quite a while actually since I've done something like this where I'm talking to another survivor. I think it's quite easy to get hooked into the speeches and rooms of people that, haven't necessarily experienced this. And I think it's really nice to come back to an environment like this and do something like this and just have a really organic and open conversation, knowing that who you're speaking to really understands what you're saying. So yeah, a little bit nervous because I think you're talking to another survivor and it is a relatively big deal. Yeah, really excited.
Yeah, great. It is a big deal, but you're in safe hands, I hope. I think talking to another survivor, we all get it. We all know what we've been through and how it feels. So one thing I'm really conscious of is that survivors are often introduced through their trauma and before anything else. So, it's a massive part of our identity and who we are, but actually we are just people and we've got a lot of other things about us. So before we start here, can you describe who you are today outside of your trauma?
Yeah, of course. It's a really tricky one to differentiate between who am I now and who am I as a result of what happened in both positive ways. I'm not saying that's necessarily a negative thing, but I think if you were to look at me today, I'm quite a strong-willed person, aka you could say quite bossy, very confident. Again, sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. It comes in its way. Massively family orientated, work quite hard. I live quite a simple life, to be honest. I quite like having my family, having my close friends, doing the wholesome things. I've grown up in nature, so a lot of my life, and especially the job I do now, is very much outside on the tools. Um, and I think I quite like the fact that actually my life's quite simple. Who I am today is quite chilled. Food's a massive part. Yeah, it's all the standard stuff really. I'm nothing too exciting, nothing too crazy really, but it's quite nice. Content.
No, that sounds really nice. That's who you are outside of what had happened to you. And I know that what has happened to you is a massive part of your life and it is a massive part of who you are and what you do. But it's also just nice to know who Poppy is and who we are as outside of it. And because there's so much
Mm,
more that we are, and it doesn't necessarily it kind of defines us, but I also don't like to think that it does at the same time. It is a massive part of
yeah,
who I am as well, but I wear so many other hats. So
you could say it's guided us and given us an attitude and different sense, but it's nothing. I'm proud of who I am today because of it. And I think especially with childhood sexual abuse, it's most of your life. It's Like it would have happened in a pivotal moment of you growing up and massively influenced that. But to be honest, I never really see it in a bad way. I actually see the strength that I now have as a result of that. And you never know who I could have been, what I could have been doing should it not have happened. Would it even be different? But I love the life I'm living. You can't look for answers that you can't, you can't ask questions that no one has the answer to. So here we are.
I think that's a great way of looking at it, and very mature way of looking at it, and positive way of looking at it, because we could dwell on it, and it's there are some days that are bad and some days that are good, but I'm very much the same. I'm like, I'm going to take what happened to me and use it as a positive. It's taken me a long time to get here, not gonna lie. Like that wasn't straight away, and I don't think it is for most people, to be honest. I think it's a journey, isn't it? But I love your attitude about it. You are who you are, and it's made you who you are, and you've got a happy life, and what happened to you was hideous and awful and shouldn't have happened, but you've turned it into something positive, and I think that's great.
In some ways, you could say quite unusual in some sense, because a lot of people don't get the support or are believed. And I had that from quite an early stage. A lot of people didn't, don't get me wrong. I did still experience the being cut off, not being listened to, people thinking I'm lying. But my close immediate family actually did believe me. And I think that was really pivotal in having this mindset now, and actually that mindset from quite an early age. And I appreciate that's not something that everyone gets to experience. But ultimately, I did see the good in people too, because those that did believe in me, they meant more. And I saw the beauty in the healing and with having people around me like that. I think it was a real cut off. I don't need you in my life. You guys obviously clearly matter and love me. So I'm going to concentrate wholly on that. So I have to remember that my situation is quite unusual because of the belief and the love that I did see right from the start.
Yeah. I think that's important to recognize as well, that not everyone has that. And lucky, I don't want to use that word, because we're still not lucky to what happened. But yeah, you were lucky in the sense that you had a very supportive network around you, and not everyone has that. So yeah, you have often been described you are described as a survivor advocate. What does that actually mean to you on a personal level?
For me, it's the fact that I'm on the other side. I survived something that a lot of people couldn't even imagine happening. And I'm now in a place where I can talk about it and advocate it from a very real and honest perspective. I think it's really easy for policies and bills and things to go through, and the people that have written them or created them actually haven't experienced what we've experienced. And I think it's important, if you have the ability, and I think I've always been a massive chatterbox. I've always been able to waffle my way through anything. I've always had a big mouth facing. Hopefully in an okay way, in a nice way. And I think because I am able to, and I have the confidence to share my story in that way and articulate things in a way that hopefully other people would be able to understand, it's meant that I've been able to have that positive impact on policy and the issues that have, or the causes that have the ability to make a massive difference in someone's life. We all rely on that justice system to give us our, oh, I'm not lying. Like we almost need that as it seems often people need like a real cut off in terms of, no, see, the courts believe me, I wasn't lying and things.
Yeah.
That's really where a lot of people are let down. So if I'm able to use my potential overconfidence and love to chat to change that from a perspective where I can advocate and articulate what survivors are actually going through, is really important to me.
Yeah. I think that's really important. It's people can hear us and listen to us, but when they don't understand it, it's really hard, because if you haven't experienced it, it's like anything. If you haven't experienced it, how can you empathize with someone when you haven't gone through it? And I think child sexual abuse is up there because obviously it is such a hard thing to want to tap into, to even try and think about. People don't want to think about it, and I get that, why you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't want to think about something like that happening, but it does. And in order to have people's voices up there and explaining it and how it affects us is really, really important. And it's also incredibly brave what you do. And, you know, you were so young when you started telling your story. You know, you were a child when you started telling, or you're 16 when you came forward and started telling your story. That's incredibly young and very, very brave to do that. And I think you're incredible. That it's to want to be someone to stand up there and be the voice and the image for other children is really remarkable. So you're incredibly brave for doing that. You were so young. Can you, if you're comfortable with doing so, just to sort of give the
Of
listeners
course.
a bit more of context? You don't have to go into any detail if you don't want to, but kind of, yeah, give us the context of what happened to you if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, of course, of course. So at the age of 3, 4, I would often go down to childcare with my grandparents. A lot of people were, mum and dad would be away working, and my grandparents lived below me. When my nan wasn't around, my granddad would quite often sexually abuse me and rape me. So yeah, it started at a very young age and went on for quite a few years, probably until I was 7-ish. And then it stopped. I started to try and say something. Mum and dad were like, what's going on? And had a conversation, confronted him, and he said, oh, she obviously just seen me step out the shower. I'm so sorry, I'll be more careful. Very, as we all know, they're very manipulative. They know how to manage a situation, how to coerce a situation to get themselves out of things. So it did fortunately stop at that point because I think he realised it was a bit of a close call. But yeah, so I was being abused from quite a young age. He then lived with us, continued to live with us, and till I was 11. My anxiety and what I used to call at the time guilt, and still do, then got the worst of me, and I couldn't cope anymore. On a day-to-day, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't concentrate, I constantly felt like a horrific person. I thought that I was a bully, that I deserved what was happening. To be honest, you know what? I didn't even realise what had happened to me when I was younger was as bad as it was. I'd convinced myself that was very normal. Still didn't feel right, but that surely was normal. Other people's grandparents must do that to them. I then made it into my fault and reflected that off in different ways. So I was a bully, I wasn't nice, I shouldn't have done that, I don't deserve anything, because that was my way of managing it. I became very close to him, very protective over him, and making sure that he was okay and never wanted anything to happen to him. In some ways, I became the adult in that relationship, trying to also hide what was going on. And it all got too much for little 11-year-old me, and I panicked. I didn't know what else to do, where else to turn. So the day that I actually told mum properly, I had the words to at this point. When you're 4, 5, 6, 7, your vocabulary isn't actually there to be able to have those sorts of conversations. So I think it was partly that was a big thing. I didn't know what was happening to me, let alone even how to explain what was happening. But yeah, the day that I ended up telling my mum, I never expected to. I felt really guilty. I was really anxious that day about whatever it was. It was honestly these silly things that used to get to me. I'd been sick in the morning because, again, it was in the physical manifestations that it began to show. And she turned to me, she said, what is that? I cannot understand why what's going on? Why are you so wound up? I can't comprehend it. Because the things I was telling her, being like, I don't deserve it because I did this. She's like, what? I don't know that make any sense. That it doesn't add up what's going on. And I don't know what it was, genuinely. I have no idea why, but I ended up telling her that day. And fortunately, her initial response is, okay, we're gonna protect you, we're gonna do something about this. You never have to see him again. And at the time I was like, what? But I don't want anything to happen to him. I don't want anything to happen to him. No, you can't tell anyone. It's fine. I just want some help. I just need some counselling because I can't live like this anymore. And the rest is history from that point on. The police got involved, didn't really want them to be involved in the first place. And then I gave my statement. They came back to us and said, what you've described to us is rape and sexual abuse. And I remember just repeating those words in my head. There's no way. There's something on the telly. There's something so far removed. Yeah, doesn't it? What? That's ridiculous. There's no way it's that bad. But I remember going over and literally hearing those words and hearing it put like that. It was immediate. I was like, cut off. No, don't care. You can do what you want. So you can go to prison. You can die there. Do you know what I mean? That was a real sort of sliding, like a real cut-off point. It was the old me knew me, and that was it. And I think I'm fortunate that I had that reaction quite early on. It allowed me really to cut off and focus on myself, my family, and what we were going to do next.
Wow.
So that, I don't know whether that was a long story short. I feel like it was a short story long, is what happened to me, why I do what I do now, and a big part of who I am now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I say this to everyone that I've spoken to when they give a context of their story. I always say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And it's never the right thing to say. And it's not the right thing to say, because that, when people say it to me, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And there's not words, is there, to say to someone when they've been through it. You can say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. It's kind of like when someone loses someone that they love and they say, oh, I'm so sorry,
sorry for your loss. Yeah,
sorry for your loss. And you think, oh, it's not gonna bring them back, or it's not gonna make this not happen. But there's no words really. But what you went through was absolutely horrific and just horrible. And I'm glad that he went to prison. I'm glad that you got justice, and you are who you are, and you seem like a very mature, lovely girl. So you've obviously, and I've spoken to your mum, and she's my first caller, and she seems amazing, and she's obviously supported you throughout this, and you've had an amazing amount of support, which you need when this sort of stuff happens to you. You do need it, because it's a lot. It is a lot.
I think I mentioned that doubt that you have in yourself, and a lot of the time you need someone to believe in you. Actually don't even believe in yourself. I've quite a bit of the work I do at the minute is around a manifesto to look at how the justice system works for survivors, why so many survivors aren't getting justice. And the name of that manifesto is The Beauty of Belief. And I do genuinely believe that's where everything stems from. And when that fundamental aspect is taken from a child or a child survivor, it's really difficult then to continue with your journey, because you're in a mental state and you've never had the ability to believe in yourself in whatever sense that is.
Yeah. I think that is one of the most important things, is that, and I think that's another reason why people don't come forward. It took me 17 years to come forward. And I think a massive element of that was something that you mentioned, that the guilt. I had an enormous amount of guilt. Oh, it was my fault. I let it happen. Why did I let it happen for so long? I liked it. I had a nice relationship with him. I thought he loved me and all that sort of stuff. But a massive part of it was, people aren't going to believe me. Why would they believe me? It happened so long ago. I have no evidence. It's his word against mine, or my word against his. Why are people they won't believe me? And so I just pushed it to the back of my mind for so long. And that is when all of those horrible feelings that you have, that kind of thing that you were feeling, like I'm not good enough, and I'm not worthy, and I will just do this because I hate men, because men treated me like shit, so I'm gonna treat them like shit, and I'm just gonna give my body away, and I'm gonna drink lots of alcohol. You were obviously younger, so you weren't doing that, but that's how a lot of people were, and that's how I dealt with it anyway.
I would have done the same. Yeah. No, exactly.
And it is not being believed. And I remember there was this one specific moment, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I used to work in a call center. I was an actor for a very, very long time. And I used to do shifts in a call center, and it was horrific, awful place to work. But anyway, and we were sitting around, and I think I was doing a call for, I don't even know who I was, cold calling people to sell something. And in the meantime, we would sit in like a circle of computers, and we would all sit next to each other. And we all used to go on the Daily Mail because everything else was cut off. We couldn't have social media or anything in there. And we had the Daily Mail. And at this point, Jimmy Savile was all over the news. It was everywhere. And Ralph Harris and all of that. And it was really obviously, and by this point, I hadn't told anyone. I was, keeping it secret. And so many people were reading it, and it was all everyone was talking about. And I remember this one person saying, because a lot of people then came forward much later, and this person said, "Oh, well, why did they not come forward when it was happening? They're just making it up. They just want to get into the media, and they just want to get money, and they're making it up because why would you not say it when it's happening?" And I remember sitting there thinking, well, this is exactly what happened to me. So I'm definitely not going to say anything, because if they're feeling like this about other people, then they're going to feel the same about me. So why would I say anything? And I didn't for many years after that. I just hushed it. But there was a point where I wanted to stand up on that chair and shout to everyone, being like, I've been abused. But I didn't, obviously, because that would have been mental. But it's so many people, and you'd hear it. So I for so many years just thought, well, they're not going to believe me.
Worst fears, and you were being reinforced right in front of your eyes. But there's that complete lack of understanding from, but I think people forget or don't want to believe how manipulative these people are and can be and hide in plain sight.
Or they just don't understand it. Like, do they not understand that these men and women are incredibly clever, and they're so manipulative, and they are, like you just said, they're just people that we know of. There's not strange. Well, it is stranger danger. Obviously, there is stranger danger, but the majority of the people are people that we know.
It's people that we know. Is who it happens to. No, I mean, in some ways, those people that are like that, though, you're like, actually, I'm glad you don't understand. You can live in your little bubble, but you also then think, when it's 1 in 5 who go through this, or 1 in 4, I think it's changed now, who under 18 actually, report this crime. You think that person within a circle of probably quite a few people that have also experienced it, and they are so naive and so small-minded that actually they're probably stopping quite a large group of people in the scheme of things, in a relative sense. Stop them from speaking. They're going to be the reason why someone goes down a horrible route of drinking or that absolute self-hate, because they can't and don't feel they can say anything. And actually, in some ways, that person is making sure that they can't say anything. The fact that people are willing and able to say, or happy to say that, when they have absolutely no idea. And I think this is the other thing, is a lot of people think it happens to people of a lower status, and they live like they're obviously quite poor, or you get all of these stereotypes. There's going to be someone sat in the corner with a big bottle of vodka, and do you know what I mean? They can't cope, they can't do anything. And actually, the survivors I've met are some of the most strongest, incredible, driven people. And unfortunately, I do think that potentially a lot of that is because for so long we've had to try and prove to ourselves and to the people around us that we're good people, and therefore go probably the extra mile. But people can be more wrong about the fact that, if they're a survivor, because they'd be broken. And actually, often survivors are the strongest, most inspiring, beautiful people. And whether that has come from a point of trying to prove that you're a good person and whatnot, actually they're so wrong. And I think for me, that's why it's so important that I do what I do now, because actually I have an amazing family, I had an incredible education, I've grown up in a beautiful place. Life is very good. This did happen, fine. But actually the rest of my life is incredible, and people need to be able to, in some ways, relate. And I think by seeing someone like me who has had a really good upbringing, and I'm so grateful for how I've grown up, I'm never going to deny that. I think people need to be able to see that actually it's closer to them than they think. I think for a very long time, it has always been, as I said, when I was younger, I thought that only happens on the news and it's dark and it's scary and it's so far away from the life that I live. No, absolutely isn't. It's
Yeah.
your next door neighbor. It's your friend's child. It's literally, unfortunately, it is everywhere. But people need to be able to make that connection.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important. It's not just, I think, you visualize, and I think people visualize this sort of thing happening in poverty or people that don't have money, or it is a massive stereotype, but it's not. I grew up in a very lovely house. I was very privileged. I had a very nice upbringing. I had private education. So people probably look at me and go, well, that doesn't happen to people like that. Well, no, it does. It really does. It doesn't matter where. They don't care. They don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. And I think that's painting a picture for people. And that's what we do in our speeches and when we get up and we speak in front of people, because we paint that picture for them, however dark it may be. And I always go in with my speech and I say, this is going to be quite a hard-hitting speech. If you don't want to hear it, please leave. But this is really important for you to hear, because you will feel uncomfortable for 10 minutes. You will definitely feel uncomfortable. You won't want to hear it, but you need to, because this is real. It's real. And it happened to me, and it happened to you, and it happened to you, and it happens to lots of other people. So, yeah.
When you stand in a room like that, when we are doing speeches, when you look at that figure of 1 in 5, and you look across that room and you think 20% of this room has experiences.
Yeah.
And even if that entire speech that I do is for them to hear, or the person next to them to change maybe how they think or how they talk about something like this, or even to begin to talk about it, it then makes that 20% who are there with them go, maybe it is okay for me to now say something, no matter at what stage, no matter how many years after, no matter about evidence or all those things that stop a lot of people. If you can open that conversation in that room, there's 20% more people that are that are more likely then to be able to feel that they have the space and will be believed should they say anything.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It is. It is very important, but it does take a lot to do it. So yeah. Like I was saying, it hasn't been an easy journey. I haven't been here for very long. It's only been in the last couple of years that I've been able to do it. But knowing that when I'm in that room and I speak in front of however many people, I know that if I can save one person, then I've done something good. I've helped one person, even if it's one or two. Doesn't matter. And I don't know about you, but when I do that speech, I have people come up to me, and I have had people come up to me since doing it saying, this happened to me. You've made me feel like I can do it and I can come forward. And I'm like, it echoes. It's a big thing. So
yeah, it's every time. It's literally every time. I remember when the BBC programme went out and the messages and the calls and I got letters, beautifully written letters from other survivors. It still comes through now, and it's a bit like wow. But a lot of these people then do also come to you and go, I have nowhere to go, can you help me? It's then finding that balance of how do I manage what I'm doing, and I'm still very much trying to help myself here. Part of this is my healing. The reason why I've done all this is because for me it's to the family that didn't believe me and potentially, excuse my French, but fuck you, I'm gonna show you that I wasn't lying, and look at the person I am now. You haven't ruined me. Actually, I'm gonna make you wish that I was still in your life. But this is also my healing too.
Yeah, 100%. This is your healing. This is a massive reason why I'm doing this podcast. Is I want to have a platform for everyone else and all these other survivors, and to come on and tell their story, because we don't have enough of a place to be able to speak out and tell our stories. So that's a massive reason why I've done it. But it's also my healing as well. It's helping me, and like I was saying before we started, it's been a journey this last couple of weeks, and it's been hard, but it's also been incredibly empowering and healing for myself to hear everyone and knowing that I'm not alone. So we're always healing. Healing is linear, isn't it? It's never stops one day and you think, oh, I'm healed, I'm fine.
So I'm like, oh my goodness, love's great. I'm so strong. And then I have a week where I'm like, if this is what the rest of my life is going to be, it's going to be a backward forward. I've got to heal. But actually, that doesn't last too long, luckily. It gets,
No.
every time I think that, it lasts a little bit less every time. And I think that's the important thing, is just recognizing that each time it gets better in some capacity. And I'm still, everyone is constantly learning about themselves. But you just have maybe a little added bit of spice to deal with.
A bit more interesting, I suppose, as well.
Exactly.
And without patronizing you are still young. You've still got, you're still figuring out who you are as well. I remember when I was 20, I had no idea who I was. Just got a few more questions that I'd like to ask, just because I think that would be really interesting. So if we go on to this question, there are so many unspoken rules around silence, which we've kind of spoken about. But what messages, whether from family, society, or institutions, do you think keep survivors quiet?
As we know, a massively taboo subject. So I think the key word in that is shame. And I think shame comes in so many different forms and like shapes and sizes. And for me, a long time, I was like, I don't really feel much shame. I was so young. I don't really fully remember it. There's nothing I could have done. Like physically, I couldn't. And there was an aspect of that. And I think you touched on it earlier. Only probably as I've got older and as I've developed as a person, you start to realize, actually, I didn't realize how much shame I still held and how many things I still don't actually do all these things. I'm an advocate for it, but there are still things I don't really admit to myself. Like you touched on it earlier about, I think I enjoyed it. And that's something that's, I actually going to talk about it now, I've got like a lump in my chest.
Yeah.
And
it makes you feel quite, I get this kind of wave of like, I don't know whether it's a wave of guilt or like a wave of sickness but I'm like,
a wave of shame.
I shouldn't be saying it.
Yeah. It's too much. That's disgusting. Like, well, I wouldn't want to hit that. I can't deal. And actually, I was at the Oxford Master Series a while ago. And I don't know if you've heard of it, you've got Bezel van der Kolk and Gabor Mate, and they all do these incredible speeches, and it's all about trauma. So it was heavy, but amazing. But I ended up meeting some amazing people there. In one of the talks, I asked a question and then it said, but there's clearly quite a few survivors in here because it was actually around child sexual abuse. Trying to go for dinner. And so a group of us all went for dinner and it was amazing. And there was a lady there who spoke so openly about the fact that she'd experienced abuse, the shame she felt, the fact that she enjoyed it, how that was then also passed on to a sibling, which that's again another thing that's really not spoken about.
Yeah.
But the way in which she spoke about it and how, in some ways, at peace with the fact that wasn't her fault. That wasn't her fault, even though she'd gone on and she had potentially not harmed her sibling in some ways. The understanding that she had around the fact that, yes, this happened to me, something awful then happened as a result of it, and technically I was a perpetrator in some ways. And I know it's different to what we were just speaking about, but that level of, that wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
I was taught to do a certain thing. I was told in a lot of like how to feel about it. And brought up a lot. I was like, oh, it's something I've never thought about, something I don't really ever want to think about. I'm quite happy I can just live my life, I can shut it down. And it had been so long since I'd felt like that and acknowledged it. And so I think even though I do speak up, there are still things I won't fully say. And because it is that shame, as you said, it's that wave, it's that panic. It's no, I'm all right, I'll just carry on without this. And when you do start to remember things, and I speak and I tell my story, and then you have a moment like that and you're like, I'm a bit of a fraud. I'm saying all these things and I've still got my own like demons to battle type thing. I'm nowhere near as much as they may have used to have been, and I'm still learning, but I think it's important that as I realise those things and those things that are still difficult for me, it's even more important that I continue to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's even more important because actually that lady, and the more I speak about it with survivors, And I think that's key, is when you can hear it from another survivor, you don't feel so alone.
Yeah.
We do a lot of our work speaking to people that may not understand it, haven't necessarily been through it. And so you don't want to say those things, because actually, it's, unless you're another survivor, trying to explain that feeling, trying to explain what that actually is, really difficult. There's the shame around it. There's shame regardless. And I think that often the people that we are trying to influence, are you like old white British men? I don't want to say that. Jesus Christ. So having these conversations, and I think there are still things that I probably still haven't learned about myself, and there are still probably things that I feel potentially quite shameful about that I don't say. And I still need to learn to speak about it and to share it, because no matter what it is, someone else has experienced it and someone else will understand you. And I've gone on like a whole different route. We started with what do you think keeps people silent? I don't know how I've ended up where I've ended up, but hey ho.
It's all good. All good. But what you're saying was really insightful, and I think it's really important that, you're mentioning the woman that did the talk and was talking about her experiences and how that's a knock-on effect for you, and then it's a knock-on effect for someone else. And you mentioned about, the one thing I still find, I can talk about pretty much anything about my trauma and what happened to me. There are still a few things that I don't talk about with anyone, but and I think, that's also okay. But it's okay to not talk about it with it. But the enjoying it was, for me, the biggest thing that I had to admit. But my therapist said to me, and I remember her saying it to me not so long ago, actually, and I was like, the way, therapists, they're great. They turn it into something completely different to what I'm thinking. And her saying it was a response of my body's response, and it's just a very natural thing to happen. It wasn't your fault. Your body was reacting. It's just an instinct, isn't it? But you think, yes, but I understand that it was an instinct, but I was 9.
From such a young age, you're being over sexualized. A lot of people, without realizing, they befriend that person as a way of survival. You
100%.
go along with it. You think you're enjoying it. In some ways, I used to sometimes initiate it because it was what I was used to. And I appreciate we're really getting into the nitty gritty here, but these are the things that I probably would have really wanted to hear someone else talk about.
Yeah.
But it's for your survival. It's what you think you need to do at that point to get through it. And ultimately, that person's really manipulating you. And there is a level of fear, for whatever reason, that people are going to hate you because of it. So you continue with it, you carry on, because one, that's all you know. Where else are you meant to get a reference from to be able to manage a situation like that? That anyone manages it. You can't fault that, because
No.
there's no book on life, let alone this. There's no one should grow up knowing what to do in that situation. So you are going to go into whatever sort of response you have to that. It's hard, but you've got to accept it, because what else are you meant to do? You did what you needed to do in that time, and whether you agree with that now or you don't, I often find in a child a really important thing, because I think if I look at a child at my age, if I look at a child of that age and see myself in that child, would I speak to them, and would I expect them to behave any differently or do anything differently to what I did? Would I be as harsh with them as I'm being with myself? Because ultimately that's who you're speaking to. You're speaking to, as you said, your 9-year-old you, and you're shaming her. And it's like, well, I wouldn't never ever look at another child and speak to them the way I'm speaking to myself now. Never,
Yeah.
ever. And I think that's always really important, to take a step back. And it's a really emotional thing to do. There has been times where I have wailed because I thought I've spoken to myself that entire time. And I was so little. I was so little. I was so young.
You're a baby.
But even at 9,
You're still a
tiny, like
baby.
you're still a baby, exactly. And just to think about how harsh I had been, and people are with themselves. You've got to look after that little person. Where else would they meant to go? Do you know what I
I
mean?
know.
What would you say to them if you maybe unknowingly were as scared as they were, as you were, and they were then? I always think that is such an important thing when people are stuck and feel so shamed about themselves. You wouldn't ever shame a child like you are right now. And so I think it's really important, yeah, really important to remember that. And it's one thing I will always say to any survivor that I'm speaking to is just think of yourself as that little you.
Yeah, definitely.
Reflect back. They're so
Yeah.
special and they protected you, actually. They protected you in such a difficult time of your life. And they did the best that they possibly could to get you through and to show you to get you to being here now. You should be thanking them.
It's a beautiful way of putting it. And I think, yeah, I've only just really sort of discovered little Chloe, and it is a really emotional thing to do. And I'm struggling a lot at the moment with little Chloe because my daughter is 8 and she's obviously very close to the age that I was when it all began. And
Yeah.
I look at her and I just think, Jesus fucking Christ, excuse my French, that was me. And when I was 9, I was very tiny. I was probably the same size as what she is now because I looked more like, when I was 9, I looked more like a 7-year-old. I was tiny, tiny,
Mm.
tiny. And I look at her and I think that was literally, you know, I look at her little body and I'm like, oh my fucking God. He I I can't, and
Just
I
that,
can't
yeah.
fathom it. And then when I do get cross with myself, because don't get me wrong, I do thank little Chloe and I do cuddle her in my mind and I protect her.
Yeah,
But
but you're not
no,
always, yeah.
when you're having your bad
Yeah.
days, I'm like, for fuck's sake, Chloe, why'd you not do anything? Fucking hell, this, that, and the other. And I'm
And
like, get annoyed with her, and I'm like, why'd you not say anything, you idiot? And then I think, would I
yeah.
say that to my 8-year-old? No. Would I
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
"B, you idiot, why'd you not say anything?" Absolutely not. I would just scoop her up in my arms and give her the biggest cuddle.
I think a lot of people, a massive question I think I've always had is like, why would you do that? Why did you do that? And there are things that we will never be able to answer. And because it's such an incomprehensible experience, the easiest thing to do is to turn it on yourself. Of course it is. The easiest person to blame, the easiest
Yeah,
person to have a go at is you, because you're the
yeah,
only thing in that moment that you kind of even controlled it. Do you know what I mean? It's the easiest place to turn or to try and get any sort of understanding is to turn it on yourself.
yeah.
And, you know, these are all things I can say now, but I kid you not, if I'm in my bad place, I am, none of these words are even going
No.
through my head. You know, so I really should take a leaf out my own book. Like, I'm awful sometimes, but it's cutting yourself some slack. Do you know what I mean? I remember being in a serious panic after the program came out. Didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, I can't believe I'm disgusted. I can't believe I've done this. I thought that I'd basically dragged my parents into it. They don't need to be involved in this. Why have I gone onto the BBC? They're being slated for the parent. That honestly, it just was like a complete car crash thing. Could not calm myself down. The phone to a counsellor that evening. Because mum was like, I don't know how to help. I don't know what to do with
Mm.
you because nothing I'm saying is listening. Let's speak. Okay, Terry is counsellor. Get her on the phone. And she tried to talk me through it. We went round and round. I was like, yeah, but. And she was a bit like, okay. And then literally just as we were about to get off the phone, she went, Pops, I need you to cut yourself some slack. And isn't it funny? It's just some things that someone says to you, you go,
Yeah.
I've, that's all I need. You know, when reason isn't even there, because you have no reason, you can't articulate what you're thinking, what you're feeling, because there isn't really any reason. It's pure panic reaction. When someone's trying to reason with you, I know I'm not thinking reasonably anyway, so if you're trying to reason with me, this isn't going to work. But just those simple words of cut yourself some slack was everything I needed to hear. And I think when you're so almost not strung up, but you're so hyper vigilant to everything, especially like growing up, to everything you're doing, how you're behaving, you've analyzed everything. It's really difficult to snap out that as you get older. And
100%, yeah.
everything you do, you like, yeah, I think that when we first chatting, when we first got on the call, you're like, I hate it if someone hates me. I'm like, exactly, yeah, same. Because it's like, what have I done wrong? It's like that automatic, what have I done wrong? Oh my God, have I been a bad person? How are they seeing me? I don't ever want to, hurt anyone or think that maybe I could have done something wrong. All of those things that go through your mind. But I think I'm off on a tangent. I've actually forgotten again where I even started.
everything that you're saying is making sense, and it's it's all very, very it's great. So don't it's
Yeah.
this is what happens on these calls, is that I have these questions, all these questions, and they're always answered in a different kind of way. So I don't actually ever have to answer them because they're always just answered with
Mm.
whatever you're saying. So honestly, you're making sense, and it's all very, very helpful, I'm sure, for people that are listening. So, and everything that you're saying, I completely, when I was saying before, it's everyone's stories are all very, very different. The parallels of how we feel
Mm.
after are so similar.
Mm.
And everything that you're saying, I'm like, I know exactly how
Mm.
you feel. It's to know, just having that connection of going, I'm not a weirdo. 'Cause I think there's an element
Mm.
of my so many years, I just thought I was sick or a weirdo or freak because
Mm.
of the things that I was feeling, and that shame, and again, going back to
Mm.
liking it and allowing it to happen and wanting it to happen. All of those things that, is hard to talk about, but I thought, oh God, well, it's my own fault because I let him do it. And but you saying all of these things, I'm like, yeah, I'm not the only one. And hopefully people that are listening, and if you are
Mm.
listening and you feel like this, you now know you're not, it's so normal to
Mhm.
feel like this. It's so normal.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
We need to cut ourselves some slack.
yeah,
We're okay. We're human. There are
yeah.
all sorts of things that people go through and all sorts of things that people do. And we're just, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, we're a tiny part of a huge world. And anything that you're beating yourself up for or overthinking or panicking about, you know what? You've been through so much worse.
Mm.
You've survived the incomprehensible.
Mm-hmm.
You're all right. You're okay. You can survive this. You're all right. You're not a crazy, stupid weirdo. Like you're not an awful person. You know, anything I love you. Whoever you are, whoever you're hating yourself for, don't cut yourself some
Yeah,
slack. I know how you feel. Whatever it
yeah,
is. Whatever it is. I promise you it's probably not that bad.
yeah. So true. I think like
Mm.
what you said there, we've survived, and I think that is really a lovely way of putting it. Like, we call ourselves
Mm.
survivors. Well, sometimes I'm a victim, depending on what day it is.
Yeah.
But most of the time I am a survivor. And then actually you think about what that word actually means. I don't ever think I've called myself it, and I call myself
Mm.
it a lot of the time. But actually when you've
Mm.
just said that, I'm like, we we have survived something so utterly horrific that most people cannot comprehend it or even think
Mm.
about it. And we've
Mm.
survived that. And I've
Mm.
actually only chill right this minute gone, that's what that means. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, we're here to tell the tale. Do you know what I mean? We're here and we're talking about our stories and we are living our lives regardless. And I
Mhm.
think it's really good to almost use that as a reference point perspective. You're like, I went through all of that. Life can't really get much worse. If
Mm.
you've experienced one of the worst things to ever experience
Yeah.
and you've survived it and you're here and actually not much else can touch you now.
Yeah.
When you really
Yeah.
get down to it, you're pretty invincible. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
If these you've gone through one of the hardest things and you're here, nothing else really compares to that. And I think it's remembering and using always that as a reference, is that actually realizing how strong you are as a person. I think it's really easy to be like, I'm just broken now. It's no, you're not. Because you're living your life, however your life is now, whatever path you've led, but you're still here and you're still surviving.
Mhm. Mhm.
And nothing much more can break you.
Yeah. So true. Incredibly strong, really. For
Hmm.
and it takes, like, I want to just reiterate, it doesn't happen overnight to be here
Mm-mm.
and to
Mm.
be talking. Some people might be listening, they might not be there and they might not be ready, and that's absolutely fine. 'Cause like I said, it took me 17 years, and in that
Mm.
17 years, I was an absolute shell of a person. I was broken. Like, when I look
Mm.
back, I think, how the hell did I get through day to days? I was a
Yeah.
completely different person to, well, I
Yeah.
wasn't me. I don't know whether I was me or if I'm a different version of, I never quite understand if that was
Well, I
really
always
me or
think
if
it.
I'm really me. Yeah. It's,
I often think it's pre and post. I do think of it as two
yeah,
different people completely.
too different.
It's weird. You're like everyone I think has a line in their lives almost of pre and post. Obviously,
Yeah.
depending if it's still very much raw and you're still very much within it, then it's different. But
Yeah.
I think it's also reminding people that wherever you are, and even if you are at the beginning, or even if you are currently, and maybe you don't realize it, but you're currently a shell of the person you could be, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And no matter
Mhm.
how it may feel like it takes for ages, and you may not even think that it is possible for you, but I promise you it is. The
It is.
body and the mind is so powerful. And I don't think we really give it its due for how it protects us. Sometimes how it protects us isn't always the best way. You know, it's for a lot of us, by protecting us, it causes us not to say anything. We really bring our heads down. We blame ourselves but when it does start to work for you in the right way, in the way that it should, it's amazing
Mhm.
how we've protected ourselves, what we're currently and what we will always do to keep that protection around us.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like a lot of the, again, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but like the fact that people fear about not having evidence and things, how your body has stored that information and how your body reacts to a situation is so telling of what that person has been through. You know how it's like they don't remember all the detail, so it clearly didn't happen. It's like actually
Mhm.
that's actually even an even bigger indicator that it did happen, because
Yeah.
that trauma response that your body has, the response your body has given as a result of trauma, is stopping you from remembering those things to make sure that you can just continue to live your life, and it's
Yeah.
trying to forget that for you because it's too much.
Yeah.
And I think it's we one thing I really want to do is get the justice system to look at trauma response as evidence,
Yeah.
because it's so telling. It's so
Yeah.
telling.
Yeah. I mean, if they'd, I mean, when I went through my trial, it took nearly 3 years to get there. But the amount of trauma, because again, like I said, 17 years, I hadn't brought it up. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah, yeah.
that one day, called the NSPCC, the police were around, boom, that was it, the start of everything. And I
Okay.
started remembering absolutely everything. And I had all of those memories and all of those things that I'd put in a little box in the back of my brain were all coming up. And I got very sick. I was in hospital. I physically sick,
Mm,
mentally sick. And
mm,
again, if they took that into consideration, okay, I was lucky in the sense that he did get found guilty and he was sentenced to 9 years. So I had other evidence that helped that case, and his defense was fucking shit. But but if they'd taken that into consideration as well, it definitely would have helped, because I was in and out of hospital because all of a sudden my body was like, what is going on? It
mm.
was, it's really
Everything it had
odd.
held for so long
Mhm.
as well. All of that,
Yeah,
like the
just comes
tension
out.
and just like complete, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was so sick. I lost so much weight, but it was more the physical side of it that I didn't, until I was experiencing it. I was like, "Oh wow, this is weird." And I didn't know it at the time, but now when I look back, I think that's why I was so sick, because it was a
Mm,
trauma response to everything that had happened to me, and I
mm,
was so ill. And that's another thing people don't really understand as well, how trauma affects your whole body, and how it affects you
mm,
afterwards, and the whole
mm,
aspect of that, and it never goes, and it's just bloody constant, really. It's,
mhm,
yeah. So I think what
mm.
your work in the justice system is incredible, and I'm very passionate about the justice system, because it was, I mean, this is a whole other topic that we could go into
Yeah.
probably on another episode. But I mean, oh God, I could talk about the justice system all day long and how shit it is. And
It just it
yeah,
ruined lives. It has so much power to be able to change someone's life,
yeah,
but actually, unfortunately, a lot of that power is used to inflict much further harm, and it
yeah,
often does.
100%. And how it is never about the victim, it's always about the perpetrator,
Yeah.
and how that is
Well,
so. And it's not just my
yeah.
story, because when I hear about other people, I'm like, oh my God, so it wasn't just me. This
Yeah.
happens. Yeah. And like I said, I'm lucky that he got found guilty, but how I was treated was so
Mm.
bad, and how I was treated afterwards as well, terrible. So definitely we could
You're
talk about
literally
that.
fighting for your life in a
Yeah,
place that's meant to be protecting your life. As I
and
did some work, just as a little add on to that, I did some work on the Victims and Prisoners Bill.
mm-hmm.
Just the name of the bill on its own, Victims and Prisoners, because they didn't want to give them their individual bills, so it was chucked in together because just then it was quicker and easier to sort out.
Of course.
Sorry? Who mixes the Victims and the Prisoners Bill together? Who in their right mind has gone, hang on a minute, what? If we're gonna hit two birds, one stone, let's get this one out on the way. And then we choose those two and put those together and chuck that through courts.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, what?
Yeah.
And I think it's really difficult as well sometimes because, like, like people like yourself and me, really difficult to understand the thought process from someone who doesn't understand it. It's like, hang on, never in my right mind would I ever treat someone like that or put someone through that. And I think actually that's probably something that makes it so difficult to do this work, because you cannot understand why things are the way they are or why people are treated the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it really then difficult to battle that, because it just fundamentally just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make sense. So how do I explain that to the courts, or how do I explain that to the justice system? It just doesn't work. I can't understand, like, morally that's not correct.
Yeah.
It's a beast of a thing to try and battle, but as you said, it could be literally an entirely other episode.
Yeah.
Very, very willing to do that.
Yeah. I think I would. I've definitely want to do an episode on the justice system. I also am very cautious. I don't want to make it all negative, because I want people that are out there and that are listening to want to have that courage to come forward, because you can get justice. You can.
Really
It
good
does.
point. Yeah.
It does take a long time, and it will take a long time. Sometimes it can take 7 years.
Yeah.
Mine took nearly 3, and yours took a long time as well. And it is a grueling, horrific moment of your life, and it is re-traumatizing. I got PTSD from it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was shit, but I would always want people to feel like they can come forward, because
Yeah.
you will be believed, whether you will get the verdict that you
The
want.
response, yeah.
You can't.
But there
obviously
are
guarantee
people in that room. I
Yeah.
actually got to the court that day and I felt so empowered, because yes, there was a side of the room that were nasty and you could see it, you could feel it. But when I went into like the witness support rooms and things, I knew that every single person in that room knew my story in more detail than I would have ever even told my parents. They know every part of me, every detail I had to give in that evidence room. And they were still smiling at me and still stood beside me, still asking if I wanted a cup of tea. And that was a really powerful moment. I'm like, this is a massive day for me, regardless. But actually, to be in a room of people that know every detail of what happened to me and they're still smiling at me and they still want to care for me. They're not my family. They don't have to be nice. They don't have to like me. They don't know me. That was really powerful. So I think regardless of what had happened that day, to know that there was an institution of people and there was a group of people who were kind and cared for me that day and believed in me. My side was being fought for, regardless. There were people fighting for me. For the first time, it wasn't a battle on my own anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's regardless of a court outcome, regardless of how that goes for you, it's really important to see that aspect of it too, because that's really healing.
Yeah. I think that you can get that. Your experience will obviously be different to mine, because you were a child. I think as an adult, slightly different. You aren't
Yeah.
as protected. And I'm not saying that we we should be necessarily, because as a child, obviously you should have absolutely everything that you got, and you probably should have got more. But one thing that I noticed, because I was an adult, I was 29. No, sorry, no, I wasn't. I was 30. How old was I? 30, 31 when I was in court.
Okay.
Full on adult. But when I would walk into that courtroom, I was 11-year-old Chloe, 9-year-old Chloe, or because my
Mm,
abuse went over from 9 to when I was coming up 13. So I was that child. I was a tiny
mm,
little meek and mild, and I was absolutely shitting a brick. And these people see me as this, I was an adult. And I think one thing I would also say, and I want to sort of do when I'm working with the Home Office and stuff like that, I'm doing stuff with them, you know, recognize that. Recognize that just because
mm.
we're adults in that room, we weren't. We weren't
You're
adults.
asking them about, yeah, but you're also asking them to relive something, and the only
Yeah,
time they've lived that was when they were a child. So
yeah,
everything they're going to be telling you right now is through the eyes of the child, and the responses they're going to give, because that's the life, that re-traumatization,
mhm,
it's all going to be from the perspective of a child. And yeah, massively, it's something that really needs to be
yeah,
given the space and realization. And I think, yeah, no one thinks about it like that. But yeah, really great point of it,
yeah.
you are a child when you're stood in front of them.
I felt like and that's the only time that I've ever felt so utterly, utterly vulnerable. Obviously, I was very vulnerable when I was a
Mhm,
child, but I don't remember feeling
mhm,
like that. But when I was in there, maybe
mm,
that's how I did feel. But it was this real overwhelming feeling, and I got I re-traumatized all over again, and I did get severe
mhm,
PTSD, complex PTSD from it. So it it's
mhm.
not an easy thing to do. It
No,
really isn't an easy
no.
thing to go through the court processes. But I would always say to people, if you can, do it, because it is hard. And if you've got support around you, great. If you don't, you do get support. You can get support from the police. There's some
Mm,
charities out there that can support you, but do it, because you never know the outcome, and hopefully you'll get a guilty verdict. But it is also a place to
mm,
try and get you to that, for that healing. And yeah, because we know that people don't come forward because they're so scared, and because of the justice system and what we've been through. It's not a secret. Everyone knows that it's an absolutely corrupt,
mm,
horrendous thing. Everyone knows
mhm.
it's not good. Yeah, I think that would be my one message. But we have been talking for a very long time, and I'm very conscious that it's going to be a long episode. Every episode that I've done, I've said to everyone, I could talk to people for hours. I really could. There's just never enough. I don't think you want to talk about absolutely everything, and there's just never enough
Mm,
time. But you've been amazing, and you've spoken so eloquently and articulately, and you've shared
thank
everything.
you. Such a pleasure to be able to chat to you. As I said before, to actually speak to another survivor in this sense, in this space, is so nice, and it's so
Yeah.
unusual
Yeah.
to be able to share that and talk. You talking when you're speaking to another survivor, that you talk in a different way. It is just different. So thank you so much for having me on with you. It's been really lovely. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I'd love to get you back on and maybe talk about your work with the NSPCC and your advocacy work, 'cause I know that we haven't
Mm,
really touched on that. So I'd love to get you back on and talk about that and your work with the justice system. I would love you to come back on, and we could dive more into that, and ISCA as well, that
yeah,
you've been on and stuff. So if you're happy to, because again, we could
definitely.
continue, but I think it would go on for ages. So yeah, thank you so much, Poppy. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. You're lovely. I get a really lovely, warm feeling from you, and you just seem lovely. So thank you for sharing everything, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. We'll catch you on another episode, hopefully.
Yeah,
Um,
we'd love it. Would love that.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Be Brave Project. If anything we spoke about today has affected you, please remember this: you are not alone, and you deserve support. There are people and organisations ready to listen, to believe you, and to help you through whatever you're facing. Support is available. and you'll find the helpline numbers just below. Please take care of yourself. Be gentle with your heart, and remember, being brave doesn't mean being unafraid. It means choosing to keep going. And I'm so proud of you being here. Until next time.